Welcome back, and in this third and final segment, we're going to take a look at how do you actually ask for money for your ministry. What are some things that are important to know? The first thing that's important is you have to quit thinking of yourself as a beggar. People who are asking for funds, do not think of yourself as a person out selling apples on the street corner. That's the biggest hump to get people over. It's much better to think about yourself as the voice of God inviting people into doing work of the kingdom. Think of yourself as one of the Blues Brothers. You're putting a band together again, and you're going on a mission for God. Often people who are asking for money will think, I'm so uncomfortable and I'm begging and this is just not really a good thing. But pause on that for a minute. If you've put your case together and if you truly believe in that ministry and it's vital and important to you, then are you not, by asking for funds, inviting people into the work of the kingdom? Are you not the voice of God to those people? That's a whole different way of understanding your role in all of this process. And I find that unless people are able to change the attitude about what they're doing, then they're probably not going to be effective in doing this work. It has to do, first of all, with your theology, and then internally. What am I really doing? I raise money for the Youth and Family Institute with a great amount of enthusiasm because I fully believe that what we do at the Youth and Family Institute is about the kingdom. It is about revitalization. It is connected with the gospel of Jesus Christ. I can do that, and if someone says to me, no, that doesn't bother me. If someone says yes, then it's gratitude to God because it's not about me. And that's an important lens by which to think about all of this. There's 5 steps in asking for a gift. First of all, you got to identify who you're going to go talk to. Secondly, you want to evaluate them. What is their ability? What do you know about them? What are their interests? If you're going to go ask somebody who has a great interest, say, in missions, and you're going to go ask them for funds, then you need to know, well, what kind of missions? Where? What kind of captures their imagination? You want to cultivate that relationship with them. In other words, continue to get to know them. Find out a little bit more and more about what it is that pushes their button. Build a relationship, because ultimately they'll give to your case, but they're really giving to you because of the relationship. In other words, because they say, okay, I buy your case, but I trust you. And that's important. And finally, you'll ask them, and we're going to talk about how to do an ask here in a minute. And then at the end, we're going to talk about thanking. But first of all, I'm going to demonstrate how to go through this whole process with one of you here in the room. I've got my colleague here, Jim Ledoux. He is our director for events and coaching. And I know quite a bit about Jim, so I'm going to go through this series of 5 questions to ask Jim for a gift for the Youth and Family Institute. Jim, it's good to see you. I appreciate you giving me the time to come and talk with you today. And as I understand, we've been working together now. I know that you care deeply about First Third of Life ministry. You've done tons of work as a youth worker yourself. You have 2 boys that I know you love and are enthusiastic about. You volunteer at your church doing youth ministry. You're a youth guy, as best as I can understand. Jim, I want to talk to you a little bit about what we do at the Youth and Family Institute. We're about revitalizing the church for the next generation. We're about revitalizing the church for all generations. But most importantly, we're about revitalizing the church through ministry to those in the first third of life. So that's kind of aligns very closely with you and with some of the values I know you care about. The board of directors of the Youth and Family Institute has said to me, Paul, we want you to go out and raise funds for this organization for revitalization through First Third of Life ministry. That's your call. That's your mission. And they are very enthusiastic about that. And all of our board members are donors as well. So, Jim, given all of that, I'd like to ask you if you would be willing to consider a gift, prayerfully consider a gift, for the Youth and Family Institute in the amount of $1,000 over the next year. And that those funds, we could talk about various places you may want to drop them in that particularly hits on an issue that you're interested in. Would you prayerfully consider that?
I'll be happy to, Paul.
Okay. I'm grateful for that, and what I plan on doing is I'm going to get back to you in about 4 or 5 days. I know you probably need to talk to your wife and look at your finances a little bit. And let me call you back, next Friday, and we'll talk about where this is going to go. And I appreciate your time. Okay? Now let's break that down, what I just did with Jim. I tried to build a relationship with him, reminding him of things we've talked about and we share in common. Secondly, I've tried to make sure I understand who he is and what his core values are. And we connected. He nodded. Yep, that's important. Third, I assured him that I'm not out here freelancing, that what I'm doing is I'm representing the board of directors and the organization we call the Youth and Family Institute. So I assured him that there stands an authority behind me. Fourth, then, I asked him for a specific gift. That's where the research comes into play. The worst thing you can do is ask a millionaire for $100. Big mistake. And because I sign Jim's checks, I have an idea what Jim does. And so I thought, okay, what might be a reasonable gift given what I know about this guy? If we were going to do this even better, I would have written this all up, and that request would have been in a letter, and so that he could take it home with a return envelope in the whole bit. And then I did not force him to make his decision this very moment. I said, I'll get back to you in a week. He's not going to, I will not accept, I'll get back to you. No, I'm going to get back to him. That's more important. And we set a time when that will happen. And then finally, I used the words, would you prayerfully consider? That's as hard to ask as you ever need to give. It's between God and Jim now. Think about it, pray about it, talk to your wife about it. Now, Jim might have said, well, Paul, because of your low wages that you provide at the Youth and Family Institute, this is ridiculous. I can answer this question immediately and say no. And if he were to say that, then the only other question I would come back to him with is there a giving level you'd feel comfortable sharing? As a second possible question. Most important, after I've asked Jim for the gift, I don't say anything. That's really important in doing an ask. Let the person think. Let them ponder what it is. But I don't want to fill that silence in with anything. That's the ball. I've just thrown him the ball. The ball is there. So I'm out of that. And I'll wait until that person responds. That's so important. People who do asking get all nervous. They do the ask, and they get about 10 seconds of silence, and they just can't stand it anymore. And so they start yakking and yakking and yakking. And they talk themselves right out of the ask. Okay? Does that make some sense? Okay. How to ask, we've talked about that. You pray for generous hearts and minds. Decide who should be the person, and you must touch upon the big three, which I did with Jim as well. The big three questions all donors are asking are, so what, who cares, and why me? So what? Why is this important? I made the case for Jim. It's about revitalizing the church through First Third of Life ministry. Who cares? My board of directors cares. I'm not standing here alone. And why me? Because I know you have a passion for the ministry. In all asking, prayerfully consider or comfortable giving. A no third is a not aimed at you, but a yes often is. A no simply means, for all kinds of reasons, people may say no. But a yes often is a yes because of the trust. And give them time to think. Ideas for giving. Face-to-face requests are best. You have a 90 to 95% chance of getting a gift if you ask somebody face-to-face for a gift. 90 to 95% face-to-face. If you do it over the phone, you have somewhere between a 25 to 45% chance of receiving a gift if you ask over the phone. If you send them direct mail, or email, it could be anywhere between 2 to 6%, depending on how effective that is. If you put it in the bulletin, consider it only a reminder. Do not consider that a big request. If you put it in the bulletin, you consider that the big request, you've wasted ink, because that's only a reminder. Also remember, memorial funds are good places to offer or look for funds. Congregations often will do second offerings. I've seen congregations do the jar for youth. They'll have the big jar in the back. In this particular congregation, that was the culture. They do their regular offering, then they had the big jar in the back, and the kids were going to go to a national youth gathering. And so money would land in the jar, and that's how it was collected. That was the way they asked. Always look for possibilities for matching funds. Many people that you'll be talking to work for corporations that will match gifts. Doing human auctions, that's a fun way with kids, a way of asking for gifts where you kind of auction off the kids to go rake leaves or something like that. The Pink Flamingos trick is simply the practice of encouraging your youth group to get these gaudy pink plastic flamingos, they're yard ornaments, put them in the yard, and of course the pastor has to get up and say, well, it's that time of the year again. The pink flamingos have landed. We have a full pink flamingo infestation in our church community. But there's good news. You can get the pink flamingo removers to come to your house and remove them for a small fee. And so then the kids will go around and pick them up. And you can make this pretty elaborate. You can spray paint pink flamingo hay bales, and now you've got pink flamingo nests. And then put the birds in there. And so you can decorate. But what's really fun is when the kids then ask you, okay, we've gotten the pink flamingos off your yard. Thank you for your gift to the youth program or to the children's program. Where should they go next? And this is where you now get your neighbor, send them to your neighbor, and then the whole thing starts all over again. That's a classic, and it's been done for years and years. It's one of my favorite fundraising efforts. And of course, e-giving is really good, and the best example of that is with the national youth gatherings. You can now go online, if your youth, say, is going to a youth gathering, you can go online through the Mission Loan Fund. That child could set up a page for themselves, like their own little MySpace, for the gathering, and say, I'm grandma or grandpa and I want to give them a gift. I can put it online to them and it'll go to their account. Thanking is the final part. It's really important when you ask that you thank. And the biblical text is the familiar one from Philippians. It seems like Philippians was the one church the Apostle Paul actually got along with. And there's this wonderful opening. I thank my God every time I remember you. In my mind, handwritten notes are critical. Letters reporting totals need to be done, of course, at the end of the year for tax purposes. But remember, people give, the studies show that people will give, and they may give only for tax purposes. That's the 10th reason out of 1 to 10. People will give because they're generous or excited about the cause. If they get a tax break, that's great, but that's not a big motivator for them. Provide them updates on ministry, celebrations. Kids can send them thank yous, video thank yous, website updates while you're doing your stuff. All of those are different ways by which you can provide thanks. Before we close, one last thing. It's important as you think about who's going to be asking, that you ask the important question, who's the right person to go do the ask? So, for example, if you're going to someone who is of considerable means, then you probably wouldn't send somebody who is not of considerable means because they'll be intimidated by that. It's not an equal power relationship. A person of considerable means probably needs a visit either from a peer, similar, or, say, from the pastor, who may not necessarily be of considerable means, but they own an office. They represent an office. And there's a certain authority that goes along with that. So always look at, you want peers talking to peers. And that's really important. We've done this segment, put it online for you. We hope you enjoy it. We hope it moves your ministry to the next level. And if you have any questions about any of this, contact me with the names and the number that you see on your screen. And thanks.